The engagement party was in full swing when Marina felt a violent tug on her navy blue silk dress. The fabric tore from waist to hem, exposing her leg before more than 200 guests. Melissa, her brother Rodrigo's fiancée, held the piece of fabric in her hands with a cruel smile on her lips. "This is poor people's clothing. You came to my engagement looking like a domestic servant," Melissa screamed, throwing the fabric on the floor. The ballroom fell into absolute silence. Marina felt every face turn toward her, some with pity, others with morbid curiosity. Rodrigo ran to his fiancée, but to defend Melissa, not his sister. "Marina, couldn't you have worn something more appropriate? You know how demanding Melissa's family is." Marina held back her tears, grabbed her purse, and left the ballroom with her head held high, clutching the pieces of the dress that had cost her 3 months of her former salary. What no one there knew was that Marina had signed, that very morning, the acquisition documents for Splendor Cosmetics, the company where Melissa was marketing manager and boasted about earning a 6-figure salary. Marina had spent the last 5 years building her own technology company, working 18 hours a day, investing every penny she earned. When her startup was bought by an international conglomerate, Marina received an amount that transformed her into one of the wealthiest women in the country. But she had kept everything secret, living simply, avoiding ostentation. Monday arrived and Melissa entered Splendor Cosmetics as she always did, greeting the receptionist with her usual arrogance. At 9 in the morning, all employees were summoned to an emergency meeting in the main auditorium. The CEO, Mr. Augusto, climbed onto the stage, visibly nervous. "I have an important announcement to make. Our company has been acquired and we have a new owner." Marina entered through the side door, wearing an impeccable charcoal gray suit, hair pulled back in an elegant bun, accompanied by 3 lawyers and her personal assistant, Julia. Melissa instantly paled. Other employees began to whisper. Marina walked to the microphone calmly. "Good morning, everyone. My name is Marina Casteller, and as of today, I am the owner of this company. There will be significant changes in the administrative structure." Her gaze swept the audience until she found Melissa, who was sinking into her chair. "I want individual meetings with all managers, starting with marketing management. Melissa Torres, please report to the executive meeting room in 15 minutes. During the meeting, Marina remained absolutely professional. She reviewed every campaign that Melissa had led over the past 2 years. She discovered unjustified expenses, falsified reports, and evidence that Melissa had approved contracts with suppliers in exchange for expensive gifts. "You will be immediately suspended while we conduct a complete audit. If the irregularities are confirmed, we will take appropriate legal action." Melissa tried to argue, then beg, finally threaten. "You can't do this to me. I'm your brother's fiancée. Rodrigo will destroy you." Marina just smiled. "Rodrigo has no power here. This is a business decision based on facts. You have 1 hour to remove your personal belongings." That same afternoon, Rodrigo stormed into Marina's office, furious. "You're doing this for revenge, because of a damn dress." Marina remained seated, impassive. "I'm doing this because she committed corporate fraud. The documents are with the legal department. If you want, you can review them with your lawyer." Rodrigo pounded the desk. "You were always jealous of Melissa. You were always the failed little sister who couldn't achieve anything in life." Marina stood up slowly. "Leave my office now, Rodrigo. And don't come back unless invited. Security, please escort my brother to the exit and add his name to the list of unauthorized persons." In the following days, the audit revealed that Melissa's scheme was even bigger than imagined. She had embezzled almost $2 million over 3 years, using shell companies registered under straw names. Marina handed all evidence to the public prosecutor's office. Melissa was charged with embezzlement, falsification of documents, and criminal conspiracy. Preventive detention was ordered a week later. Rodrigo tried to sell his apartment to pay bail, but Marina used her contacts to ensure that no bank would approve the loan he needed. Their mother, Donna Teresa, appeared at Marina's house on a rainy night. "You need to withdraw the complaint. Melissa is in jail. Rodrigo is destroyed." Marina served tea to her mother with steady hands. "She committed serious crimes, Mother. I didn't invent the evidence. I just brought the truth to light," Donna Teresa cried. But she's your brother's fiancée. She'll be the mother of my grandchildren. Marina took a sip of tea. A criminal is not worthy of being part of this family. Rodrigo chose to defend her instead of protecting me. He chose his side. Meanwhile, Marina promoted Claudia, a junior analyst who had always been humiliated by Melissa, to the position of marketing manager. Claudia was a 45-year-old black woman, single mother of 3 children, who worked 2 shifts to support her family. Under Claudia's leadership, the department flourished. Marina also implemented a scholarship program for employees' children and created a daycare center within the company. Productivity increased 40% in 3 months. Rodrigo appeared again, this time not with anger, but destroyed. Melissa confessed everything. She used me from the beginning. She only stayed with me because she thought our family had money. Marina felt no satisfaction, only an empty sadness. I tried to warn you that she wasn't who she pretended to be. You preferred to believe her. Rodrigo collapsed on the sofa. I sold everything I had. I'm bankrupt. I lost my job because her boss was my partner and he blames me for the scandal. Marina crossed her arms. And what do you want from me? Rodrigo looked at the floor. Forgiveness. Just that. I was wrong. Marina remained silent for long minutes. You can work in the warehouse at Splendor. Starting salary, no privileges. If you prove you've changed, there may be an opportunity for growth. Rodrigo raised his eyes, surprised. You would do that for me? After everything? Marina sighed. You're my brother. I won't leave you in the gutter, but you'll have to earn every penny you make, and you'll pay me back every cent I spent trying to save Melissa. 3 months later, during a routine audit at another company Marina was considering buying, her team discovered something disturbing. Donna Teresa, her mother, was on that company's payroll as a ghost consultant, receiving $15,000 per month without ever having worked a single day. The company belonged to Melissa's father. Marina confronted her mother that same night. Donna Teresa confessed through tears that she had been receiving the money for 2 years. Melissa had been blackmailing her with family secrets from the past, threatening to expose that Donna Teresa had had an extramarital affair years ago, something that would destroy her marriage to Marina and Rodrigo's father. Marina felt the floor collapse. Her own mother was involved in the scheme. You knew what Melissa was doing and never told me. You let her humiliate me at that engagement party, knowing she was a criminal, Donna Teresa begged. I was afraid of losing your father, afraid of destroying the family. Marina stood up. You're going to return every penny you received illegally. I'll installment the payments from your salary at the school where you work. And you're going to tell Dad the truth. If you don't do it within a week, I will. A week later, her parents separated. Marina's father, Jorge, discovered not only the old affair, but also his wife's complicity with Melissa. He moved to a small apartment and cut off relations with Donna Teresa. Jorge sought out Marina, and for the first time in years, father and daughter really talked. I'm sorry I didn't realize how strong and independent you've become. I always treated you like the delicate daughter who needed protection. Marina held her father's hand. I became strong precisely because I learned not to depend on anyone. Melissa's trial took place 6 months after her arrest. Marina attended all hearings sitting in the front row. Melissa was sentenced to 8 years in prison in a closed regime. When the sentence was read, Melissa looked directly at Marina and whispered, You won. Marina didn't respond. There was no victory there, only justice. Rodrigo continued working at Splendor, gradually rising in position. He enrolled in a night business administration course and began dating Claudia, the manager Marina had promoted. When Rodrigo told his sister about the relationship, he expected disapproval. Marina just smiled. Claudia is an admirable woman. You finally learned to recognize the real value of people. 1 year after the engagement incident, Marina was reviewing contracts when Julia, her assistant, rushed in. You need to see this. It was an investigative article from a major newspaper. Melissa's scheme was even bigger, involving 5 other companies and more than $20 million in embezzlement. Melissa's father, the true mastermind of the scheme, had been arrested that morning. Marina had unknowingly uncovered one of the largest corporate frauds in recent years. Reporters surrounded the Splendor building. Marina gave a single press conference. I did nothing but examine documents from the company I bought. Justice did the rest. I hope this case serves as a warning for other companies to strengthen their internal control mechanisms. When asked about the engagement incident, Marina replied, "That torn dress cost me 3 months' salary at the time, but it gave me clarity about who really mattered in my life. It was a low price for a valuable lesson." 2 years later, Marina expanded her business to other sectors. Splendor Cosmetics tripled its revenue under her management. Claudia became director of operations and Rodrigo, regional manager. Donna Teresa finished paying her debt and tried to get closer to her daughter, but Marina maintained a polite distance, meeting her mother only on specific occasions. Jorge, her father, became Marina's unofficial advisor, offering his life experience without trying to control her decisions. On an ordinary afternoon, Marina received a letter from prison. It was from Melissa. The letter said, "You destroyed my life because of a dress." Marina reread the sentence several times, then tore up the letter and threw it in the trash. It wasn't about the dress and never had been. It was about dignity, about justice, about not allowing cruel people to remain unpunished simply because they shared family ties with their victims. Marina never married, never had children. She dedicated herself entirely to business, becoming one of the most respected executives in the sector. She created a foundation that offered microcredit to low-income women entrepreneurs, especially those who had suffered domestic violence or public humiliation. The foundation's name was Torn Dress, a direct reference to that terrible night that had changed the course of her life. At a meeting with foundation beneficiaries, a young woman raised her hand. "Why that name? Torn Dress seems so strange for a foundation." Marina smiled, a smile that carried years of pain transformed into purpose. "Because sometimes people try to strip us of our dignity in public, expecting us to be paralyzed by shame. But we can choose to use that moment of humiliation as fuel to rebuild our lives in a way they never imagined possible. Each of you is here because you refuse to remain destroyed. You're sewing a new dress stronger than the previous one." Years later, when Marina turned 40, Rodrigo organized an intimate dinner with the few people she really considered family: himself, Claudia, Jorge, Julia, and some loyal executives who had become true friends. There was no extravagant party, no hundreds of guests, just people who respected her for who she really was, not for the money she had. During dinner, Rodrigo made a toast. "To my sister, who taught me that family is not who shares your blood, but who shares your values." Marina raised her glass, observing the faces around the table. Each of those people had seen her at her worst moments and chose to stay. Not out of obligation, not out of interest, but out of genuine respect. As they toasted, Marina thought of Melissa, still serving her sentence in prison, and all the people who had tried to diminish her throughout her life. They had failed, and in their failure, Marina had found her true strength. The foundation grew exponentially over the following years. Marina personally interviewed every woman who applied for microcredit, listening to their stories of survival and resilience. Many of them had experienced public humiliation similar to what she had endured. Some had been betrayed by family members, others by partners or colleagues. Each story reinforced Marina's belief that the worst betrayals often came from those closest to us. One particular case caught her attention. A woman named Patricia had been publicly fired from her job after her supervisor falsely accused her of theft. The accusation was later proven false, but Patricia's reputation had been destroyed. She had lost everything, including custody of her daughter when her ex-husband used the false accusation against her in family court. Marina didn't just give Patricia a loan. She hired the best lawyers to help Patricia regain custody and sue her former employer for defamation. 6 months later, Patricia had her daughter back and a successful catering business. During this period, Marina received an unexpected visit. It was Amanda, Melissa's younger sister, whom Marina had met only twice before the engagement party. Amanda was 23, visibly nervous, and carried a folder of documents. "I need to talk to you about my father and Melissa," Amanda said, her voice trembling. Marina gestured for her to sit. Amanda revealed that she had been gathering evidence against her own family for over a year. "My father destroyed lives for decades. Melissa learned everything from him, but there's more you don't know." Amanda opened the folder. Inside were documents showing that Melissa's father had also been involved in a scheme to manipulate stock prices, using insider information to profit millions while destroying smaller investors. Among the victims was a retirement fund that had lost everything, leaving hundreds of elderly people without their pensions. "Why are you telling me this?" Marina asked, studying the young woman carefully. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "Because I'm tired of being part of a family of criminals. Because what Melissa did to you at that party made me sick. Because I want to be better than them." Marina reviewed the documents carefully. They were authentic and damning. "This could send your father to prison for the rest of his life. You understand that?" Amanda nodded. "He deserves it." "They all do." Marina contacted the authorities with Amanda's evidence. The investigation expanded dramatically. Melissa's father was charged with additional crimes, his sentence extended to 25 years. Other family members were also implicated. Amanda's mother, who had always claimed ignorance, was found to have been actively involved in laundering money through charitable organizations. She received a 10-year sentence. Amanda, now estranged from her entire family except for an elderly aunt, struggled to find her place in the world. Marina offered her an entry-level position at Splendor, with one condition: you earn your place through merit, nothing else. "I won't give you special treatment because you helped bring your family to justice." Amanda accepted gratefully. Over the next year, Amanda proved herself to be hardworking and honest. She started in customer service, handling complaints with patience and professionalism. Marina watched her carefully, looking for any sign of the manipulative traits that had characterized Melissa. But Amanda was different. Where Melissa had been cruel and calculating, Amanda was kind and genuine. Where Melissa had taken credit for others' work, Amanda consistently acknowledged her colleagues' contributions. One evening, Marina was working late when Amanda knocked on her door. "I just wanted to thank you," Amanda said, "for giving me a chance when you had every reason not to." Marina set down her pen. "You gave me evidence that helped put major criminals in prison. I should be thanking you." Amanda shook her head. "You didn't have to do anything. Most people would have turned me away, afraid I was like them. But you saw me as an individual, not just as Melissa's sister." This conversation marked a turning point in their relationship. While they never became close friends, a mutual respect developed between them. Amanda eventually worked her way up to become a team leader in the customer relations department, known for her ethical approach and genuine care for both customers and colleagues. Meanwhile, Rodrigo's relationship with Claudia continued to deepen. 2 years after they started dating, Rodrigo proposed. When he asked Marina for her blessing, she was genuinely happy for them. "Claudia is the best thing that ever happened to you," Marina told him. "Don't mess it up." Rodrigo laughed, but his eyes were serious. "I learned my lesson. I know what real love looks like now. It's not about status or money or impressing other people. It's about respect and partnership." The wedding was small and intimate, nothing like the extravagant engagement party that had started everything. Marina stood as Rodrigo's best woman, a role that surprised many, but felt right to both siblings. During her speech at the reception, Marina spoke honestly about their journey. "My brother and I have been through hell together. We've hurt each other, disappointed each other, and nearly lost each other completely. But we found our way back because we both chose to grow rather than remain stuck in our mistakes. That's what family really means." Jorge attended the wedding with his new partner, Elizabeth, a retired teacher he had met at a community center. Marina liked Elizabeth immediately. She was warm, intelligent, and had no interest in Jorge's money or social connections. She simply enjoyed his company. "Your father is a good man who made some mistakes in judgment," Elizabeth told Marina during the reception. "But he's learned from them. We all should be so lucky to get second chances." Donna Teresa was not invited to the wedding. Rodrigo had made the difficult decision to maintain distance from their mother, who continued to make excuses for her behavior and showed no genuine remorse. "She calls me every week," Rodrigo confided to Marina. "Always asking for money, always playing the victim. I finally had to change my number." Marina understood. Some relationships were too toxic to salvage, even with family. The foundation continued to expand its reach. Marina hired a full-time director to manage daily operations, allowing her to focus on strategic growth. They opened 3 new offices in different regions, each focused on supporting women in various industries. The success stories multiplied. Women who had been dismissed as failures, humiliated by employers or family members, were building thriving businesses and reclaiming their dignity. One success story particularly moved Marina. A woman named Sophia had been publicly shamed by her husband's family for being unable to have children. They had called her worthless, spread rumors that she was cursed, and eventually pressured her husband to divorce her. Left with nothing, Sophia applied for a microloan from the Torn Dress Foundation to start a small bakery. 5 years later, her bakery had expanded to 4 locations and employed 20 people. When Sophia came to speak at a foundation event, she said something that resonated deeply with Marina. "They tried to define my worth by what my body couldn't do, but I defined my worth by what my mind and hands could create." As Marina approached her 42nd birthday, she received notification that Melissa was eligible for parole after serving 5 years of her 8-year sentence. The parole board requested Marina's input as the primary victim of Melissa's fraud. Marina spent several days considering her response. She could oppose the parole and likely ensure Melissa served her full sentence, or she could remain neutral and let the board decide based on Melissa's behavior in prison. In the end, Marina wrote a detailed letter to the parole board. She outlined the extent of Melissa's crimes, the impact on the employees and investors who had been victimized, and the calculated cruelty Melissa had shown even before the fraud was discovered. But she also acknowledged that the justice system had served its purpose. Melissa Torres has been held accountable for her crimes. Whether she has truly reformed is not for me to determine. I trust the parole board to make an informed decision based on her conduct and rehabilitation efforts. I will not oppose parole if the board believes she has earned it, but I also will not support it. My role in this chapter ended when justice was served. The parole board ultimately denied Melissa's request, citing lack of genuine remorse and failure to complete required rehabilitation programs. Melissa would serve at least 2 more years before being eligible to apply again. When Marina learned of the decision, she felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just the same empty feeling she had experienced throughout the trial. Melissa's punishment brought no joy, only closure. Julia, who had been Marina's assistant for 7 years, announced she was leaving to start her own consulting firm. Marina was proud rather than upset. "You've learned everything I can teach you," Marina said during Julia's farewell lunch. "Now go build something amazing." Marina not only gave Julia a generous severance package, but also became her first client, hiring her firm to handle special projects for the Splendor Cosmetics expansion into new markets. Julia's replacement was a young man named Marco, recently graduated from business school and eager to prove himself. Unlike Julia's calm efficiency, Marco was energetic and sometimes overwhelmed, but he showed genuine dedication. He reminded Marina of herself at that age, hungry for success, but still learning how to channel that hunger productively. She mentored him patiently, teaching him not just business skills, but the importance of integrity and treating people with respect, regardless of their position. One afternoon, Marco rushed into her office with news. "There's a woman in the lobby who says she needs to speak with you urgently. She won't give her name, but she says you'll want to hear what she has to say about Melissa Torres." Marina's first instinct was to refuse. She had closed that chapter of her life, but curiosity won. "Send her up." The woman who entered Marina's office was in her 50s, professionally dressed but with an anxious expression. "My name is Helena. I was Melissa's cellmate for the past 2 years." Marina gestured for her to sit, wary but willing to listen. Helena took a deep breath. "Melissa talks about you constantly. She's obsessed. She has a notebook filled with pages about you, about plans for when she gets out. I'm being released next week and I felt I had to warn you." Marina's blood ran cold. "What kind of plans?" Helena pulled out her phone and showed Marina photographs she had secretly taken of pages from Melissa's notebook. The pages were filled with detailed information about Marina's daily routines, her business dealings, the foundation, even the people close to her. There were sketches of what appeared to be surveillance plans. "She's convinced that you destroyed her life deliberately, that everything you did was revenge for the dress incident. She doesn't see herself as guilty of anything except underestimating you." Marina immediately contacted her security team and her lawyers. They filed for a restraining order even though Melissa was still in prison, ensuring that when she was eventually released, she would be legally prohibited from coming near Marina or anyone associated with her businesses. They also alerted prison officials about Melissa's notebooks, which were confiscated. An investigation revealed that Melissa had been using contraband cell phones to gather information about Marina, potentially violating prison regulations. These violations resulted in disciplinary action that would further delay any future parole consideration, but Marina took additional precautions. She upgraded security at all her properties and businesses, hired a personal security detail for the first time in her life, and briefed everyone close to her about the potential threat. Rodrigo was particularly shaken. After everything, she still blames you? She still can't accept responsibility for her own actions? Marina was less surprised. Some people never change, Rodrigo. That's why it's so important to recognize them early and protect yourself. Helena's warning proved valuable. When Melissa was finally released 3 years later, after serving her full 8-year sentence, she immediately attempted to contact several people associated with Marina, violating the restraining order within hours of her release. She was arrested again and charged with stalking and violation of a restraining order. The judge, unimpressed with Melissa's continued obsession and clear lack of rehabilitation, sentenced her to an additional 2 years in prison. This second incarceration finally seemed to break something in Melissa. According to reports Marina received from her legal team, Melissa had a mental breakdown in prison and was transferred to a psychiatric facility within the correctional system. She was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and delusional disorder. While Marina felt a twinge of pity, it was tempered by the knowledge that Melissa had been given multiple opportunities to change course and had rejected them all. Years continued to pass. Marina's business empire grew to include not just cosmetics, but also technology consulting, real estate development, and a venture capital firm focused on funding women-led startups. Each business operated under the same principles: ethical practices, fair treatment of employees, and a commitment to creating opportunities for those who had been overlooked or underestimated by traditional systems. Claudia and Rodrigo had 2 children, both of whom called Marina Aunt Marina and adored her. Marina spoiled them appropriately, funding their education and taking them on educational trips during school breaks, but also teaching them the value of hard work and integrity. When Rodrigo's son Miguel turned 10, he asked Marina about her success. "How did you become so rich, Aunt Marina?" She thought carefully before answering. "I worked hard. I was smart about opportunities, and I never compromised my principles for short-term gains. But I also got lucky in some ways, and I never forget that. That's why I try to create opportunities for others who need that same luck." The Torn Dress Foundation celebrated its 10th anniversary with a gala that raised millions for its programs. Over 1,000 women had received support from the foundation, with a success rate of 78%, far higher than traditional lending programs. Marina gave the keynote speech, standing before an audience of donors, beneficiaries, and supporters. 10 years ago, I stood in a ballroom, humiliated and hurt. I could have let that moment define me as a victim. Instead, I chose to let it fuel my determination to build something meaningful. Every woman we help through this foundation is making that same choice, to transform pain into power, humiliation into determination, setbacks into comebacks. After the speech, an elderly woman approached Marina. She introduced herself as Mrs. Chen, one of the retirees who had lost everything when Melissa's father's stock manipulation scheme destroyed the pension fund. "I wanted to thank you," Mrs. Chen said. "Because of the evidence you provided, the courts ordered restitution. I received a settlement that allowed me to live comfortably again. But more than that, I wanted to thank you for showing that justice is possible, that powerful people can be held accountable." Marina was moved by the encounter. She had known abstractly that her actions had helped the pension fund victims, but meeting one of them face to face made it real. "I'm glad you got some measure of justice," Marina replied. "No one should have their security stolen by criminals in expensive suits." Mrs. Chen smiled. "My granddaughter applied to your foundation last year. She got the loan and started a tutoring business. She told me about why it's called Torn Dress. You turned your worst moment into a way to help others turn around theirs. That's true strength. As Marina entered her mid-40s, she began to think about legacy and succession planning. She had built an empire, but she had no children to inherit it. She considered various options: selling to a larger corporation, taking the company public, or establishing a trust that would maintain the company's ethical principles after her death. Eventually, she decided on a hybrid approach. The for-profit businesses would be structured with employee ownership programs, giving those who built the company's success a stake in its future. The foundation would be endowed with enough resources to continue indefinitely, governed by a board of directors composed primarily of former beneficiaries who understood its mission. Marco, now her chief of staff after 5 years of dedicated service, was being groomed as a potential CEO. Claudia, as director of operations, was another candidate. Marina wanted to ensure that whoever eventually led her companies shared her values and vision. She instituted a comprehensive leadership development program, identifying promising employees at all levels and providing them with training, mentorship, and opportunities to prove themselves. During this planning process, Marina received an unexpected letter. It was from Amanda, Melissa's sister, who had continued to work at Splendor and had recently been promoted to Director of Customer Relations. The letter was a request for a meeting to discuss something personal and important. Curious, Marina agreed. When Amanda arrived, she was accompanied by a lawyer, which immediately put Marina on alert. But Amanda quickly explained, "I'm not here to cause problems. I'm here because I'm getting married, and I want to legally change my last name to distance myself completely from my family's legacy. But I also want to establish a trust fund to provide restitution to any remaining victims of my father's and sister's crimes who haven't been fully compensated. I've saved money over the years, and I want to do this right. I need advice from someone I trust." Marina was impressed by Amanda's commitment to making amends for crimes she hadn't committed. Over the next several weeks, they worked together to establish the trust fund, with Marina providing legal and financial guidance. The fund wasn't large enough to fully compensate everyone, but it represented a genuine attempt at restorative justice. Amanda's actions earned her respect from many of the victims' families, some of whom sent her letters of appreciation. On Marina's 45th birthday, she took stock of her life. She had built a business empire worth billions. She had created a foundation that had helped thousands of women rebuild their lives. She had reconciled with her brother and father, maintained a few genuine friendships, and earned the respect of her industry. She had also survived betrayal, public humiliation, and threats to her safety. Through it all, she had maintained her integrity and her principles. That evening, sitting alone in her penthouse apartment overlooking the city lights, Marina thought about the engagement party 15 years earlier. She could still remember the feeling of the fabric tearing, the sound of Melissa's cruel laughter, the weight of hundreds of judgmental stares. But she could also see how that moment had clarified everything for her. It had shown her who truly cared about her and who was only interested in appearances and status. It had given her the final push she needed to stop hiding her success and start using it purposefully. She poured herself a glass of wine and raised it in a solitary toast. Not to revenge, not to victory over enemies, but to resilience, to the choice to build rather than destroy, to the decision to transform pain into purpose. The torn dress hanging in a frame on her wall, preserved as a reminder, seemed to shimmer in the lamplight. It was no longer a symbol of humiliation, but a trophy of survival and transformation. The next morning, Marina received a call from the director of the correctional facility where Melissa was being held. After years of psychiatric treatment, Melissa had finally shown signs of genuine progress. She had written a letter of apology, not just to Marina, but to all her victims, acknowledging her crimes and the harm she had caused. The director asked if Marina would be willing to meet with Melissa as part of her rehabilitation process. Marina's initial instinct was to refuse, but after consideration, she agreed to read the letter first. The letter arrived by secure courier. Marina opened it carefully and began to read. Melissa's handwriting was shakier than she remembered, less confident. The letter was several pages long and surprisingly honest. Melissa acknowledged her crimes, her cruelty, her manipulation of Rodrigo and others. She admitted that she had been raised by a father who taught her that people were tools to be used, that empathy was weakness, that the only thing that mattered was accumulating wealth and power by any means necessary. She wrote about the years of therapy, the slow and painful process of understanding how deeply damaged her worldview had been. But what struck Marina most was Melissa's conclusion: "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I destroyed lives, including my own. But I want you to know that I finally understand what I did. I see the woman I was, and I'm horrified. I'm not asking for anything from you. I just needed you to know that you were right about everything. The dress was never the point. It was about cruelty, about the pleasure I took in hurting someone I perceived as beneath me. I can't undo what I did, but I can at least acknowledge the truth." Marina read the letter 3 times. It seemed genuine, lacking the manipulative undertones that had characterized all of Melissa's previous communications. But Marina knew that sociopaths could be excellent actors, that narcissists could fake insight when it served their purposes. She consulted with a forensic psychologist who specialized in personality disorders. After reviewing Melissa's psychiatric records and treatment progress, the psychologist believed the transformation was likely genuine, though cautioned that such cases were rare and required continued treatment and support. After much deliberation, Marina decided not to meet with Melissa in person, but she did write a response. It was brief and to the point. "I acknowledge your letter and your stated remorse. Whether it is genuine or not, time will tell. I hope for your sake, and the sake of anyone you encounter in the future, that you have truly changed. I forgive you not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to let hatred poison the rest of my life. That said, our paths should never cross again. This is goodbye." She signed it simply Marina and sent it through the facility's official channels. With that final piece of closure, Marina felt a weight lift that she hadn't fully realized she'd been carrying. The obsession with Melissa, the vigilance, the anger, all of it finally released. She could move forward completely unburdened by the past. That weekend, she gathered her closest friends and family, about 15 people in total, and they celebrated at an intimate dinner party at her home. There were no speeches, no formal acknowledgments, just good food, genuine laughter, and the warmth of authentic connection. During the dinner, young Miguel asked her a question. "Aunt Marina, do you ever regret not getting married or having kids?" The table went silent, but Marina smiled. "Sometimes I wonder what that life would have been like. But I also know that the path I chose allowed me to help thousands of people, to build something meaningful, to make a real difference. Different people find fulfillment in different ways. I found mine through building, creating, and giving others opportunities. That's enough for me." Rodrigo raised his glass. To Marina, who taught all of us that strength isn't about never falling down, but about how you stand back up. Everyone drank to that, and Marina felt truly at peace. The torn dress incident was now truly in the past, a historical marker rather than an open wound. She had transformed it from a moment of humiliation into the foundation of her greatest achievements. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Jorge, her father, pulled her aside. "I know I haven't always understood you or supported you the way I should have, but watching what you've built, who you've become, I'm prouder than I can express. Your mother and I failed you in many ways, but you succeeded in spite of us." Marina hugged him. "You taught me resilience, even if you didn't mean to. Everything has its purpose, even the painful parts." The weeks and months that followed were productive and peaceful. Marina continued to expand her businesses, mentor emerging entrepreneurs, and grow the foundation. She traveled extensively, exploring new markets and ideas, building partnerships with international organizations focused on women's economic empowerment. She was invited to speak at conferences around the world, sharing her insights on business ethics, leadership, and social responsibility. On one such trip, she met Catherine, an executive at a major European corporation who shared many of her values and vision. They struck up a friendship that deepened over time. Catherine became one of the few people Marina truly trusted, someone who understood the pressures and responsibilities that came with significant wealth and power. Their friendship was built on mutual respect, intellectual challenge, and shared commitment to using their resources for positive impact. Years turned into a decade. Marina turned 55. The foundation had now helped over 10,000 women, creating a network of successful entrepreneurs who supported and mentored each other. Many of them had started their own charitable initiatives, creating a multiplier effect of positive change. Splendor Cosmetics had become an industry leader not just in product quality, but in ethical business practices, serving as a model for other companies. Melissa was eventually released from the psychiatric facility after completing her treatment program. True to her word in her letter, she moved to a different region, changed her name, and lived quietly, working at a nonprofit organization that supported crime victims. She never attempted to contact Marina or anyone from her past life. Reports suggested she genuinely had transformed, though Marina maintained her boundaries and never sought to verify this personally. Amanda married and had children, building a life completely separate from her family's criminal legacy. She remained at Splendor Cosmetics, eventually becoming vice president of customer relations, known for her integrity and genuine care for both customers and employees. Her children knew nothing of their grandfather's and aunt's crimes until they were old enough to understand the full context and the importance of learning from family mistakes rather than repeating them. Rodrigo and Claudia celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary. Their children were thriving, growing into thoughtful, kind young people. Rodrigo had become regional director at Splendor, overseeing operations across multiple states. He had proven himself through years of hard work and ethical decision-making, earning his position through merit rather than family connection. The siblings had fully reconciled, their relationship stronger for having survived its darkest period. Donna Teresa lived alone, her health declining. She had never fully reconciled with either of her children, unable to take full responsibility for her choices or offer genuine amends. Marina visited her occasionally out of duty, but there was no warmth between them. Some relationships, Marina had learned, were simply too damaged to fully repair, and that was acceptable. Not all endings were happy, and not all family bonds survived the weight of betrayal. As Marina approached 60, she began to step back from daily operations of her businesses, transitioning to a chairman role while promoting the next generation of leaders. Marco became CEO of the holding company that managed all her business interests. Claudia became CEO of Splendor Cosmetics. Both had proven themselves over many years and shared Marina's commitment to ethical business practices and social responsibility. The Torn Dress Foundation was now led by Patricia, the woman Marina had helped years earlier when she'd been falsely accused of theft. Patricia had completed a business degree, gained extensive nonprofit management experience, and demonstrated the same compassion and determination that had characterized her own comeback. Under her leadership, the foundation expanded its mission to include legal support for women fighting false accusations and public defamation, coming full circle to address the type of injustice Patricia herself had experienced. On her 60th birthday, Marina sat in her office at the foundation headquarters, looking at the wall where the torn dress still hung in its frame. Beneath it now hung photographs of thousands of women the foundation had helped, their faces radiating pride, determination, and hope. Each photograph represented a story of transformation, of someone who had refused to be defined by their worst moment. Julia, her former assistant, who now ran a successful consulting firm, stopped by with a birthday gift. It was a book, beautifully bound, containing testimonials from every woman the foundation had helped over its 20-year existence. Marina spent hours reading the stories, tears streaming down her face. Story after story of women who had been humiliated, betrayed, dismissed, but who had used that pain as fuel to build something meaningful. One testimonial particularly moved her. It was from Sophia, the baker whose husband's family had shamed her for being unable to have children. Sophia wrote, "Marina taught me that my worth wasn't determined by others' expectations or cruelty. She taught me that humiliation could be transformed into determination, that the people who tried to break us could never succeed if we refused to stay broken. My bakery now employs 30 people, many of them women with stories like mine. We're not just baking bread, we're rebuilding lives. That's the legacy of the Torn Dress Foundation." Marina closed the book and looked around her office. Every piece of furniture, every document, every photograph represented choices she had made, principles she had upheld, people she had helped. The torn dress incident had happened 25 years ago, but its impact rippled outward still, touching lives she would never meet, creating opportunities she would never witness directly. That evening, surrounded by the people who mattered most, Marina reflected on her journey. From the humiliated woman whose dress was torn at an engagement party to one of the most respected business leaders and philanthropists in the country, she had traveled far. But the distance wasn't measured in wealth accumulated or businesses built. It was measured in dignity reclaimed, in justice served, in opportunities created, in lives transformed. Rodrigo proposed a toast, his children standing beside him. To Aunt Marina, who showed us all that strength isn't about never being knocked down, but about how you rise back up. Who taught us that success without integrity is worthless, and that true family is built on respect, not obligation. Marina raised her glass, meeting the eyes of each person around the table. These were her people, her true family, bound not by blood, but by mutual respect and genuine affection. As the party continued, Marina stepped out onto the balcony, looking out over the city lights. Somewhere out there, Melissa was living a quiet life, hopefully having truly changed. Somewhere out there, thousands of women were running businesses, raising families, building lives they had once thought impossible. And here she stood, proof that humiliation didn't have to be the end of the story, that it could be the beginning of something greater. The torn dress hanging in her office wasn't a trophy of revenge. It was a reminder that our worst moments don't define us unless we let them. That dignity can be reclaimed. That justice, though sometimes slow, is worth pursuing. That transformation is always possible, even from the darkest starting points. Marina had never written a book, never given a dramatic speech about her journey, never sought fame or recognition beyond what naturally came with her business success. She had simply lived her values, built her empire ethically, and helped others do the same. That was her legacy, and it was enough. The torn dress in its frame would outlast her, a permanent reminder that strength comes not from never being wounded, but from choosing to heal and grow rather than to break and surrender.